The auditorium was packed with soldiers, veterans, and a few civilians who had earned the honor to attend the Navy SEAL marksmanship exhibition. The air buzzed with tension and excitement. Every seat was filled, and the banners above bore the proud words, "Precision beyond fear."
The SEAL general, a tall, broad man with scars that looked like medals of survival, stood before the gathering.
His voice carried the kind of authority that could silence thunder. "Any snipers here?" he called out, his tone both inviting and challenging.
A dozen hands went up, men with steely eyes and hands that had held rifles in deserts, jungles, and mountaintops.
The general nodded, scanning the crowd. Then, almost unnoticed, one more hand rose slowly at the back of the field. It was small, delicate, trembling slightly. The general squinted. A woman, dressed in simple jeans and a faded shirt, stood there. She didn't wear any uniform, no medals, no marks of a soldier. She looked out of place, like someone who had wandered into the wrong event.
The crowd chuckled softly. "Ma'am," the general said, holding back a smile, "you're not lost, are you?" She smiled faintly and shook her head.
"No, sir. You asked if there were any snipers." A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. Even some officers exchanged glances.
"All right," the general said with a smirk. "What's your experience?" "Farm life," she said calmly. "Long distances, quiet mornings." The laughter grew louder this time, but she didn't flinch.
The general studied her face, and something in her eyes made him pause. There was no arrogance, no fear, just calm, steady focus.
"Fine then," he said finally. "Let's see what farm life taught you." He gestured toward the range.
The target was a staggering 4.0 meters away, a distance that tested even the most seasoned SEAL snipers.
The general seconding. Command whispered, "Sir, even our best shooter barely reached 3,800 last trial." "I know," the general murmured.
"Let's just see where this goes." The woman stepped forward, her steps steady, her presence strangely composed.
"A sniper rifle, the MRAD, customized for long range precision, lay on the table."
She approached it like greeting an old friend, brushing her hand along the barrel with a kind of tenderness that made the soldiers go silent.
She adjusted the scope, checked the wind flags fluttering faintly in the distance, and then looked through the glass with eyes that suddenly seemed older than time.
The general watched closely, no hesitation, no guesswork, just certainty. "Ready?" he asked always. She whispered.
Then came silence, the kind that wraps a moment in history. She inhaled deeply, the kind of breath that gathers the world into focus.
The general's gaze flickered between her and the distant target. 4 kilometers of air, wind, heat, and gravity standing between her and the impossible.
The trigger clicked, a flash. The round tore through the air, its supersonic echo fading slowly as seconds stretched into eternity.
The spotter peered through his scope, frowning, then his jaw dropped. "Sir, direct hit." The general blinked.
What target center, sir? Perfect shot. The silence that followed was unlike anything the auditorium had known before.
It wasn't disbelief, it was reverence. The kind that comes when something sacred just happened in front of you.
The woman stood up quietly, setting the rifle down like laying down a brush after painting the sky.
"Was that acceptable, General?" she asked softly. The general couldn't speak. He walked up to her, eyes narrowing in disbelief.
"Who trained you?" "My husband," she said quietly, "before he was deployed." The words landed like thunder.
"He was a SEAL?" the general asked. She nodded. "Chief Petty Officer David Reese. He never came home." The hall was silent again, but this time with grief and respect. The general's face softened. He remembered that name, a legend in sniper history, a man who had saved lives from unseen distances and vanished during a mission overseas.
"And you?" he asked. "I used to watch him practice," she said. "He taught me the math, the breathing, the stillness. Said one day I might need it." Her eyes glistened but never broke.
The general took a deep breath, then turned to his men. "Gentlemen," he said slowly, "what you witnessed today is not luck, that's legacy." He faced her again.
"You just broke our record by nearly 200 meters.
The crowd erupted into applause, but she simply smiled faintly, looking up at the distant target shimmering in the sun.
He used to say, she whispered, every bullet tells a story. This one was his. The general nodded, his voice thick.
Ma'am, on behalf of the SEALs and your husband's brothers, that was the finest shot ever made under this banner. He extended his hand, but she didn't take it.
Instead, she looked at the rifle and then back at the general. Keep it, she said. It belongs to those who serve.
Then, without waiting for another word, she turned and walked away, her silhouette fading into the sunlight. The general stood still, holding the rifle, feeling the weight of something far greater than steel, the weight of devotion, love, and sacrifice.
As the applause slowly died down, one of the young SEALs whispered, "Sir, who was she really?" The general's eyes stayed on the empty doorway.
She was the kind of sniper you don't find in the military, he said softly. You find her in the heart of every soldier who loved someone enough to keep their memory alive.
That day, a simple woman reminded the most elite warriors that true aim doesn't come from the eye. It comes from the soul.
And though her name was never written on any roster or medal, her bullet and the story it carried became a legend whispered in every SEAL camp across the world. When the SEAL general stood before
the crowd, his eyes carried the weight of countless missions and men lost to war.
The event was meant to showcase the finest shooters from the ranks of the best Navy SEALs, Marines, Rangers, and elite snipers from around the world.
The heat of the afternoon shimmered across the shooting range, and the air was thick with competition.
Soldiers adjusted their rifles, cleaned their scopes, and whispered about records that no one had yet broken.
Then the general spoke, his deep voice echoing across the field. Any snipers here willing to test their limits?
Dozens of hands shot up instantly, men who had spent years perfecting their aim and breathing, men who lived by the trigger.
The general nodded proudly until he noticed one more hand lift slowly at the far end of the range.
It was a woman, dressed in worn jeans and a faded shirt, with no badges or rank, no sign she'd ever seen a battlefield.
The soldiers exchanged amused glances. She looked like she didn't belong. "Ma'am," the general said, his tone calm but sharp, "this isn't a demonstration for civilians." She simply smiled.
"You asked for snipers, sir. I thought I might qualify." Her voice was steady, not proud, not timid, just sure.
A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. A few soldiers smirked. "Oh, you might qualify." One of them chuckled under his breath.
The general raised an eyebrow. "And what experience do you have, ma'am?" "Long days," she said, "long distances, and a promise." Something in her tone quieted the laughter.
The general, intrigued, gestured to the farthest target, a steel plate 4,000 meters away, glimmering under the harsh sun.
"You hit that," he said, "and I'll personally call you a sniper." The crowd murmured, 4,000 meters.
Even the most advanced marksman struggled at that distance. The general wasn't mocking her. He was setting an impossible standard.
The woman walked calmly to the bench where an Emrad rifle rested, the kind used by special forces. She checked the scope, her movements precise and graceful, not hesitant or clumsy.
Her fingers moved like someone who had handled such a weapon before, not as a hobby, but as a ritual.
The general folded his arms, studying her. The wind was shifting, just slightly enough to ruin a long distance shot.
Crowd watched as she lay prone, settling behind the rifle, aligning herself with the earth as if becoming one with it.
She took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing through the scope. The spotter next to the general whispered, "She's not even calculating. No range card, no tablet." The general didn't answer.
He just watched. A heartbeat later, the shot cracked. The echo rolled across the valley. The bullet soared, silent and unseen, cutting through wind and distance.
The spotter adjusted his binoculars, scanning the far target. His eyes widened. "Sir, dead center." The crowd fell silent.
The general blinked, thinking he'd misheard. "Say that again." "Dead center hit, sir. 4,000 meters.
Perfect. For a long second, no one moved.
Then a sound rose, soft gasps, disbelief, and then thunderous applause. The general approached her, but she didn't stand up right away.
She simply looked at the target, as if staring across time. When she finally rose, the general asked quietly, "Who are you?" "My name's Clara Reese," she said.
The name hit him like a shockwave. "Reese," he repeated. "As in Chief Petty Officer David Reese." She nodded once.
"He was my husband." The general's face softened instantly. David Reese, one of the greatest SEAL snipers who ever lived, had vanished in Afghanistan years ago.
"His body was never recovered, only his rifle. He taught me everything," she said softly.
Said someday, someone would need to remember how he saw the world through a scope. Patient, calm, and true. The general felt a lump rise in his throat.
"You trained with him every morning before deployment," she replied. "He said the shot isn't about the weapon, it's about the heart behind it."
Her voice trembled for the first time, but her gaze remained firm. I promised him I'd never forget. The general looked down at the rifle she used.
It was an older model, weathered and scratched. "Is that his rifle?" She nodded. "It was returned to me. I brought it here to honor him." The general turned to the crowd.
"Ladies and gentlemen," he said slowly, "you just witnessed something that hasn't happened in the history of this program. 4,000 meters, a record once thought impossible."
The soldiers who had laughed earlier now stood in silence, heads bowed slightly. They had witnessed not just skill, but devotion, a love that transcended war.
The general took a deep breath. "Ma'am, on behalf of every man who's ever served under this flag, thank you not just for this shot, but for reminding us what it means to remember."
She smiled faintly. "He's the one who deserves the thanks. This was his shot." The general nodded, emotion catching in his voice.
"Yes," he said, "but you carried it." He handed her the medal that hung on his own chest, the SEAL Sniper Honor emblem.
"You've earned this," he said simply. The crowd erupted in applause, but she just looked at the medal, then back at the general.
"No, sir, I didn't come here for medals." She placed the emblem on the rifle and stepped back. "I came to return his promise."
Then she turned and began walking away, her figure framed against the burning horizon. The wind picked up, carrying dust and silence across the range.
The general stood there, eyes fixed on her retreating form. "Sir," one of the younger SEALs said softly, "what do we write in the record books?" The general exhaled slowly, his voice quiet but firm.
"Don't write her name," he said. "Write his, because that's what she wanted." The soldiers nodded. The name, Chief Petty Officer David Reese,
would stand as the record holder, but those who were there that day knew the truth. They knew it was Clara's hand that pulled the trigger, guided not by pride or fame, but by love and memory.
In the years that followed, the story spread quietly among the SEALs, told around campfires and whispered before deployments.
They called her the Ghost Sniper, the woman who broke every rule and every record, not for glory, but for a promise kept.
And somewhere, in that endless stretch between earth and sky, a bullet still carried her husband's name and her heart to the farthest distance imaginable.